Okay, I'm back because apparently there's now a disagreement on the TikTok ban. First, Biden said he wasn't going to enforce it. Then, now there's a new release from the Supreme Court. Let's dig in because this is just getting confusing. So, fun day when it comes to social media. All right, here we go. So, there was an article this morning that hit that President Biden had somebody in his staff leak that he's not going to enforce the ban anyway. And then the Supreme Court decision came down, which is unique. So let's go see what's actually going on here because it's getting weird. Um, as all things tend to do when it comes to, news these days. This is the weird part. I'm not surprised the Supreme Court upheld the ban, and I'm not surprised the Biden administration appeared to know that a couple of days ahead of time. Because if they didn't know it, why would they come out and say we're not going to enforce the ban if they didn't know what this was going to be? So I'm going to assume for a second that they probably did, because that's just sort of the way these things work. There's a leak, it's just down the street. You're going to find something out. But it's unanimous. When was the last time anybody remembers the Supreme Court doing anything unanimously? That's weird to me. The Supreme Court has ruled to uphold the TikTok ban. Although President-elect Donald Trump could choose to not enforce the law, it's unclear whether third-party internet service providers will support the app. I own a third-party service I own a third-party way to connect to TikTok. We're not going to stop supporting it unless it does get banned in the United States, and then unless they do take it out of the app stores. The moment they take it out of the app stores, we'll stop supporting it, obviously. But I do own a company that actually helps you post your stuff to TikTok. It's called One for All Social, O4A.com. Anyway, under the terms of the law, service providers like Apple and Google will be penalized for supporting TikTok after the law's deadline. The Supreme Court on Friday upheld the law requiring China-based ByteDance to divest its ownership of TikTok by Sunday or face an effective ban of the popular social media video app in the U.S. ByteDance has so far refused to sell TikTok, meaning many U.S. users could lose access to the app this weekend. The app may still work for those who already have TikTok on their phones, although ByteDance has threatened to shut down the app, which is interesting. So that actually is kind of interesting to me because you can still access the app through third-party apps like mine. So even if you can't download it, you can't look at other people's feeds, but you can still upload your content into the system through like my system, O4A.com. Which lets you post to all the different social media sites. And yes, they are sponsoring me because I own the place and they sponsor everything I do, including the coffee I'm drinking right now. Anyway, in a unanimous decision, the Supreme Court sided with the Biden administration, upholding the Protecting Americans from Foreign Adversary Controlled Applications Act. That's an interesting mouthful, which President Joe Biden signed into law in April. So he signed it, but he's not going to enforce it. Okay. There is no doubt that for more than 170 million Americans, TikTok offers a distinctive and expansive outlet for expression, means of engagement, and source of community, which is exactly what social media does. It gives you all those things. What it's supposed to do. The Supreme Court opinion said, but Congress has determined that divesting is necessary to address its well-supported national security concerns regarding TikTok's data collection practices and relationship with a foreign adversary. Now, what that translates to in English is TikTok does gather data on your phone. So what, you say, everybody else does it too? Well, yeah, everybody else does it, but not to the same extent TikTok does. So they gather a lot more data, and they actually gather it from outside the app in ways that others don't. Supreme Court Justices Sonia Sotomayor and Neil Gorsuch have written concurrences. Now, for all the Supreme Court justices to agree, that's weird to me. That doesn't ever happen. But Biden's still not going to enforce it, and Trump says he wants to keep it. So, sorry, this is my second live stream of the day. If I don't keep something on my throat, I'm going to, cough all day. Now, what else is there? TikTok's fate in the U.S. now lies in the hands of President-elect Donald Trump, who in December asked the Supreme Court to pause the law's implementation and allow his administration the opportunity to pursue a political resolution of the question at issue in the case. Trump will be inaugurated on Monday, one day after the TikTok deadline for sale. TikTok CEO Shou Chew is one of several tech leaders expected to be in attendance and seated on the dais. No coincidences ever occur, and that is not a coincidence. That was on purpose. The nation's highest court said in the opinion that while data collection and analysis is common practice in the digital age, the sheer size of TikTok and its susceptibility to foreign adversary control, together with the vast swaths of sensitive data from platform collects, poses a national security concern. Under the terms of the law, third-party internet service providers like Apple and Google will be penalized for supporting a ByteDance on TikTok after July 19th deadline. We haven't gotten any notification at my company on it, so I'm not really worried about it because we don't necessarily distribute the app. We can just help you post your stuff, so I'm not worried about it. If internet providers and app store owners comply, they will remove TikTok from the respective app stores, preventing users from downloading TikTok or installing the necessary updates to make the app functional. White House Press Secretary Karine Jean-Pierre reiterated President Biden's support for the law, saying that TikTok should remain available to Americans, but simply under American ownership or other ownership that addresses the national security concerns identified by Congress or in development of this law. So really that just means Congress wants access to the data. Given the sheer fact of timing, this administration recognizes the actions to implement the law simply must fall to the extent the next administration, which takes office on Monday. Now that makes me wonder something, because this administration signed it into law. They knew the date. This Congress wrote it on the thing. This was not a surprise. Everybody knew when the inauguration was, and they knew what they wrote in the law. So I don't know how all of a sudden this is like, oh yeah, well, we shouldn't have done that. Kate Ruan, the director of the Center for Democracy and Technology nonprofit, criticized the Supreme Court's decision, saying in a statement that it harms free expression of hundreds of millions of TikTok users in this country and around the world. And I think there's only about 100 million. I don't think it's hundreds of millions, but I think it's like 100, 150 million in the United States on TikTok, something like that. But forget it. That's not the point of her statement. Individuals use the app to create, to share information, to get their news, no comment on current issues, and to comment on current issues and promote their businesses. That's precisely the kind of expression the First Amendment is intended to protect. Sure. In December, members of the House Select Committee on the Chinese Communist Party sent letters to Apple CEO Tim Cook and Google CEO Sundar Pichai. I'm sure I'm butchering that, and I don't mean to. In which they urged the executives to begin preparing to comply with the law and reminded them of their duties as App Store operators. Now, their duties as App Store operators is, to get their customers what it is they want to use, not to necessarily enforce everything that they are told. So, there's TikTok putting in a Band-Aid in a severed arm. Yeah, Vinny, you're right. They are putting a Band-Aid on a severed arm, especially when it comes to this data stuff, because the amount, I was approached by somebody recently to develop an app using data that you can get on people as marketing app. And their big question was, what data can you get? And we looked around at how much data is available out there, either for free or for a fee. And the answer is, what do you want? Right? It's not really a matter of what can you get. It's, you tell me what you want. It's out there somewhere. And I could probably find it, at least for a fee, because if you look at what Experian will actually sell people, it's insane. Anyway, now last Friday, the Supreme Court heard early oral arguments from lawyers representing TikTok content creators and the U.S. government. TikTok's lead lawyer, Noel Francisco, argued that the law violates the First Amendment rights of the app's 170 million American users. Meanwhile, U.S. Solicitor General Elizabeth Prelogar countered that the app's alleged ties to the People's Republic of China via the parent company ByteDance poses a national security threat. That is very possible. I don't know that they proved that case, but I do know that there were some redacted parts of that case that were not put into the public eye. So, there's things we don't know. After the oral arguments concluded, multiple legal experts believed that the nation's highest court appeared to be more favorable in front to the U.S. government's case involving TikTok's alleged questionable ties to the Chinese government. Many TikTok creators have been telling their fans to find them on competing social platforms like Google's YouTube, Meta's Facebook and Instagram. CNBC reported, also X supported a bunch of them. CNBC reported, additionally, Instagram leaders scheduled meetings after last Friday's Supreme Court hearing to direct workers to prepare for a wave of users if the court upholds the law. And that's actually true. So let's look at this from a technical perspective, because I'm the CTO of a company that handles a bunch of tech stuff. If you're set up for a certain number of users and all of a sudden you add 15%, that's a bad day for you because servers are not going to keep up pace. So you actually do have to be ready for that influx of people. Okay. Chinese social media app and TikTok lookalike Rednote rose to the top of the Apple's App Store on Monday, which is actually true. It did. Indicating that TikTok's millions of users were seeking alternatives. The Chinese government also weighed a contingency plan that would have Elon Musk acquire TikTok's U.S. operations as part of several options, intended to keep the app from its effective ban in the U.S. Bloomberg News reported Monday. The plan was one of several that Chinese government was considering as part of a larger discussion involving working with the upcoming Trump White House, reporter said. In the chance that ByteDance decides to sell TikTok company to a group of investors, potential buyers may have to pay up to $40 and $50 billion, according to an estimate by whatever that research group is. Now, what does all this mean? It ain't going away, right? I don't think it's going away because if President Biden's not going to enforce it, the app stores are not going to pull it. It's Friday at 10 o'clock Central, 11 o'clock East Coast. Sure, tech guys can come in on the weekend and pull an app. That's not hard. There's 24-hour operations at the tech centers anyway. Third-party apps like us and our competitors in the social media management space, we're not pulling it if the API goes dark and you can't post. We've gotten no notification from TikTok that it's going to go dark from the API side. So what that means is if you still want to post and you go through an app like mine, which is o4a.com, you can still get to it. But this is very much a developing situation. However, I do believe that the app is still going to be available because if Biden's not going to enforce it and Trump wants to uphold it, it's not going anywhere, I think. Now, the interesting thing about one of the interesting tidbits that's floating over every news story I've seen, and I've seen at least 10 of them so far this morning, is that on the dais during the inauguration, you've got the CEO of TikTok, you've got Elon Musk, you've got Jeff Bezos, and you've got Zuckerberg all sitting next to the national security advisor. You think there's a deal in place already that the public may or may not know about? Sounds like there might be, because if you got two social media big owners and Bezos, who's could probably pull $50 billion out of pocket change, those three guys may be forming a consortium to kind of buy it and keep it alive. Now, if you look at that from another perspective, and this is just me kind of speculating on matters, Musk is notorious for coming out and telling people they're wrong about his intention. That rumor's been floating around since Monday, and he hasn't said a word. So that rumor, I believe, is probably more true than people think. Now, would Musk go out and buy another social media thing? I don't know. I think if he did, he'd probably just merge it with X and have it become one big thing instead of two smaller things. But it's all about the eyeballs in the social media space, right? The more eyeballs you get, the better. So that's where we're at. The Supreme Court upholds the ban. Biden's not going to enforce it. Trump doesn't want to enforce it. We'll keep track and see where it goes. Going to be an interesting weekend. So, you're right. If any of this is putting a Band-Aid on a severed arm in a way. That's an interesting analogy. I like that. Because data privacy has gone out the window years ago. So I hope everybody has a great weekend. Stay tuned. If more pops up, I will pop back on. Have a great day.